Shabbat Shalom. It is such a pleasure to get to pray with you this evening. Welcome to Temple Emmanuel of South Hills. Whether you're joining us in person or whether you're with us in virtual community, I'm so glad we can all be here this evening praying together. How good it is and how pleasant that we might join in our Shabbat evening prayers tonight. For those who are in the room, you saw a quick little switcheroo. We are seeing some reflection in the windows and the television that allows us to see where the cameras are. Apologies for sneaking out and sneaking back in. But it is wonderful to be together tonight, each and every one of us, including those who are celebrating a very special weekend. It is my pleasure as we turn in our prayer books to pages 2 and 5 for the kindling of the Shabbat lights to invite forward the extended Stein family. Abby and Ethan, would you grab everyone in your orbit to make your way up here that we might kindle the lights of Shabbat together, again beginning on page 2. As we turn to page 5, I would invite somebody to grab that goblet of grape juice, that sweetness that we feel this Shabbat, as I would invite everyone else to rise as we join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho me'ahavta uvratzon inchilanu zikaron le'maaseh bereishit. L'chaim, please. Thank you all so much. Congratulations on this wonderful simcha tomorrow. I would invite everyone to be seated as we turn now to words of Shiru Ladunai, singing a new song unto God. We continue on page 13, adding the song, adding the voice of each of us as we catch on to this wonderful new melody.
Shiru Ladunai, shir chadash, Shiru Ladunai, kol haaretz, Shiru Ladunai, baruch hu shemo, masrur yom yom yeshuato. Try that. Shiru Ladunai, shir chadash, Shiru Ladunai, kol haaretz, Shiru Ladunai, baruch hu shemo, masrur yom yom yeshuato. Vagoyim kivodo, bechol hamim niflotav, higadol Adonai, umechol meot, notahu al kol Elohim, ki chol Elohei hamim elilim, Adonai shamayim. עם עשה, הוד והדור לפניו, עוז ותפארת במקדשו. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, מסרו ליום ליום ישועתו. הבו לאדוני משפחות עמים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדר קודש, הילול יהודה כל הארץ. אמרו בגויים אדוני מלך, אף תיכון תבל ואל תימות, ידין עמים במישרים. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, מסרו מיום ליום ישועתו. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, מסרו מיום ליום ישועתו. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, מסרו מיום ליום ישועתו.
As you're preparing for Shabbat each week, there's kind of a race to the finish, trying to get work done, trying to get school done, trying to get homework done, trying to get house cleaning done, trying to get cooking done. It's nice to simply be able to gather, to take a deep breath, to welcome our day of rest and our day of peace, when we can finish all of those things we need to do, when we can simply be. We can take in the very best of Shabbat. We can take in Shabbat itself, as did the mystics on pages 20 and 21, where we turn for our words of Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat likabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat likabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, Hishianu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, Shem u'tiferet v'tehila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat likabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat likabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha, ki ממקור הברכה. בראש מקדם בסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat likabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat likabela. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat likabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat
I invite you to rise as we face the entrance, welcoming Shabbat.
Oi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'tzola.
welcome Shabbat, I invite you to take this opportunity to welcome one another, turn to the people in your personal compass, wish them a Shabbat Shalom as we form sacred community this evening. And I invite you to find your seats again as we turn to page 24, words of Shalom Aleichem, as we continue our welcoming, as we continue our greeting, this time of God's ministering angels, bringing us a sense of comfort and peace this Shabbat day.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei
Would you join me in the English on the bottom of page 27 before we join in our Chatzi Kaddish prayer? Entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time, even at unlikely times and through unlikely places. There is no place on earth without the presence.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbi V'amad yifrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chai echon uv'yom echon U'chayed kol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'vizman Yehei Shmei Rabba Mivarach Le'alam Almei Almaya Yitbarach V'Yishabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromham V'Yitnaseh שמחתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו Amen.
As we continue on page 28 with our Baruch Hu praise, the formal call to prayer, I invite you to rise if it's comfortable for you to do so.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
And would you join me on the top of page 31? Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'arim Haravim. And on the bottom of page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than the holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Pages 34 and 35.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shekevot Malchuto,
I invite you to be seated as we turn to page 36 for a preview of coming attractions. Abby and Ethan, they are all yours.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושימתם לפניך ודיברתם בם בשבתך וביתך ובלתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וישמרתם להיות על ידך, וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתרתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיהם. אני אדוני אלוהיהם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Beautifully beautifully done. Thank you both so much for leading us in prayer this evening, for joining us, for leading us in prayer and in Torah tomorrow morning. On behalf of the whole congregation, I'm so excited to pray and celebrate with you. We turn now to page 40 in our text for our Mi Chamocha prayer, the celebration of the freedom to see, to sense, to know, to do, to celebrate Shabbat, as our ancestors did long ago. Page 40. Page 42, we find our Hashkivenu prayer asking for God's sense of shelter and protection in this world. There are so many things that we struggle to see, even though they continue to surprise us by their catastrophic nature in this world and in our lives. We ask for the sense of shelter to protect us. We ask for the ability to see and intervene when at all possible. Would you join me on the bottom of page 42 with this prayer for protection with the onset of evening? Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores suchat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. And on page 44, we find the words of Vishamru reminding us that not only is Shabbat a covenant between God and the Jewish people for all time, it is a day of joy, a day of rest. So often when we think about Shabbat in the modern world, we think about all those things that we're not supposed to do, or perhaps that we feel guilty when we do. And I'd invite you to take a moment before our prayer this evening to think for a moment about what you're excited to do. What tomorrow brings you the same amount of joy that it brings the Stein family? What can you do to make each Shabbat just a little bit more special than the days around it? Take a moment, pull those thoughts into your mind, pull that intentionality and action into your heart as we continue on the top of page 44.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'Torotam Berit Olam Vishamru b'nei Yisrael HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat Israel, Bnei Israel, Oti le'olam v'shamru Bnei Israel et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורות הברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות הברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות הברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות הברית עולם.
On page 46 and following in our prayer books, we find our Shabbat evening Amidah. If it's comfortable for you to do so, I would invite you to rise as we join in song and in prayer together. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Geula livnei v'neihem, Leman Shemo v'Ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah Rab le'hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim b'chesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, Umidon elach, Melech mevit umechayeh, Umatliach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atal hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kdoshim b'chol yom yahalu chasela, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Would you read with me in the English on the top of page 55? May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat. I invite you to continue with the silent prayers that can only come from each of our hearts, or with the words of our tradition stretching through page 62. When you have finished your silent prayers, I would invite you to be seated.
Use shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Use shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Use shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom.
God bring peace to us and to this entire world, and particularly as we turn to page 253, to those who need a little bit of extra peace this Shabbat, those who may be ailing from ailments of mind, of body, of spirit. If there are those you are thinking of for our Mishaberach Lecholim, our prayer for those who are ill, I invite you to share their name at this time. If you're with us in virtual community, using the comment box if you choose to do so, and for those in the room as my eyes meet yours. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh hacholim. Blessed are you, God, who brings a measure of comfort to all who are ill. And together we say, Amen. Page 253. What do you refuse to see? We human beings are particularly adept at ignoring that which is inconvenient to us, that which we simply don't want to see, that which we are perhaps emotionally unprepared to see. In her book, Willful Blindness, Margaret Heffernan uses countless examples and studies to show that while deliberate ignorance of is a natural phenomenon, the cognitive limits of our brain simply limit what we can know and notice. What we choose to let in and what we choose to consciously avoid can actually lead us to catastrophe. On a personal level, we mostly admit, she says, the information that allows us to feel great about ourselves, while conveniently filtering whatever unsettles our fragile egos or our most vital beliefs. Sometimes that filtering even works to our advantage, oiling the wheels of social intercourse and allowing us to overlook that spot on a silk tie, or the girlfriend's acne, or a neighbor's squalor. Most of the time, though, we filter those things that we should confront. We simply don't want to. The same mechanisms that blind us to the world put us in peril. How often, after a major catastrophe, do we ask ourselves how we could have been so blind? How often do we later discover unheeded warnings? It's perhaps why some of the greatest crimes in Nazi Germany, in the Catholic Church, as we're coming to realize even within Reform Judaism, Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme, oil drilling in transport, the January 6th insurrection, and so much more take place in broad daylight. It's not that the signs weren't there, or that the harm being done was invisible. It's that we chose to ignore them until it became impossible to do otherwise. What do you refuse to see? In this week's Torah portion, we read a fantastic, here meaning fanciful or imaginative, so much so that the rabbis see it as allegorical, story. There are numerous ways that God could have saved Noah from the flood, had God wished to do so, the Talmud says. Why did God ask Noah to spend 120 years building a boat in the middle of dry land? In order, the Talmud answers itself, that someone, anyone, might have asked about his actions and been given the chance to see clearly and repent. Instead, the generation of the flood chose conscience avoidance. They chose not to see, and they paid the ultimate price for their indifference. What do you refuse to see? What we can do, Heffernan concludes, is ask the question, what are the conditions required for willful blindness to flourish? How far are we able to mitigate those conditions to make it easier to hear that quiet voice in the back of our minds begging us for attention? Could we develop new habits that might make us more aware? Sometimes it's as simple as preserving and protecting and nurturing a minority opinion. Sometimes it's as hard as trying not to be defensive when a blindness is uncovered by someone else. Sometimes it means not being obedient or pleasing or polite, even for the sake of convenience. It means sometimes celebrating those who are willing to make noise. Because if everyone is simply willing to watch that boat be made, or that oil platform, or that subprime housing market being built, and nobody ever stops to ask the obvious questions, we can't be surprised when we encounter a similarly bad fate. What do you refuse to see? Shabbat Shalom. I invite you to turn back in your Sidurim, back in your prayer books to page 282. On the bottom of page 282, we find words of Alain l'Shabeach as we begin to conclude our service. As you find your page, I would invite you to please rise.
Alain l'Shabeach Ladunai hakol, Lateit gedula liotze bereshit, shelo sanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kmishbechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korgim, u'mishtachavim, u'modim,
Seated. Would you join me in the English reading on page 288? When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. We are a people with a long memory, a memory stretching back to Sinai and beyond. And in that memory, we hold so many lives, so many memories, so many joys, so many pains, so many emotions. And when we remember a yahrzeit, the commemoration of a loved one, they all come back at the same time. Together, we remember those who have passed away from our community at this time in years past. This Shabbat, we observe the period of Shloshim for Henry Gusky, Todd Rasko, Susan Cohen Rothman, and Barbara Jean Storch. And we mark the yahrzeit, the commemoration of the passing of Gary Boehm, Morton Baker, Abe Ballin, Harry Barish, Ruth Tract Blaine, Betty Bliss, Albert Brandt, Rose Browdy, Jack Cohen, Min Fishman, May Graff, Ann Harris, Eleanor Hildock, Yetta Kaufman, Katie Kleinman, Bertha Krause, Elizabeth Betty Levine, Yetta Levine, Seymour Levy, Carl Lieberman, Rose Mazarov, Pearl Motzman, Alan Nesvisky, Erwin Newman, George Roche, Samuel L. Rosenberg, Esther Rosenthal, Gertrude Rosner, David Rouleau, Molly Scheffler, Irving Silmore, Maxwell Silver, Shayna Simkin, Harry Sofer, Harold Tucker, Ethel Weiss, Florence Weiner, Nancy Weisler, Sarah Sable Young. Weisler and Sarah Sable Young. If there are others you are remembering this Shabbat, or if I have inadvertently mispronounced the name of a loved one, I would invite you to share their name with the sacred community tonight. Yehei zichronam livracha, may the memory of all of our loved ones be for us an everlasting blessing. As we turn in our prayer books to page 294 for words of Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish, I would invite you to rise, that together we affirm these words. Page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlik malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shemei Rabba mevorach leolam lamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal, Shemei Dekudsha Barich Hu, Le'elah Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Tushbechata V'Nechamata, Damiran Be'alma V'Imru, Amen. Yehei Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chayim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru, Amen. Osei Shalom Mimramav, Hu Yasei Shalom, Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru, Amen. May God, who makes peace in the highest of heavens, make peace for us and for all who mourn. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated. A special thank you this evening to everyone who has participated in the leadership of our service. Abby and Ethan, again, I'm so excited to celebrate with you and your family tomorrow morning as you become bar and bat mitzvah. Student Cantor Sierra Fox, welcome back. Always a pleasure to get to pray with you on a Shabbat as well. Leslie Hoffman, our executive director, thank you for making everything possible, and thank you to everyone who has joined us in this space and in virtual community, enriching Shabbat by the sacredness of our opportunity to be together. We'll continue again tomorrow morning at 8:30 right here with a brief Shabbat morning prayer service, followed by Torah study at 9 o'clock, either in person in the community room or on Zoom as you are comfortable, followed by a wonderful service at 10:30 in the morning. But before we get there, before we say goodbye this evening, we continue with a closing song, Words of Adon Olam, which we can find in our prayer book, page 321.
Adon Olam Hashem Alach B'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa V'Chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Ve'hu Hayah Ve'hu Hoveh Ve'hu Yeh V'Tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'ein Sheni Lehamshil Lo Leachbira Beli Reshit Beli Tachlit Velo Haoz V'Hamisra Ve'hu Eli V'chai Goli V'tzur Chavli Be'et Tzara Ve'hu Nisi Umanos Li Menat Kosi B'yom Ekra B'yado Afkid Ruchi Be'et Isham Ve'ayira Ve'im Ruchi Geviati Adonai Li V'lo Ira.
Shabbat Shalom.